After almost 4 years of delays, the most anticipated white-collar trial in years is finally getting underway. The criminal fraud case against Theranos founder Elizabeth Holmes, who arrived in court just moments ago. Special correspondent Scott Cohen has that story for us. And Scott, we are learning more about her possible defense.
We are, Deidre, and as you can see, it's quite the ticket here in San Jose. This is just jury selection for this trial, which is expected to last about 3 months. This new information comes in court documents, newly unsealed, where Holmes attempts to place the blame on Sonny Balwani. He was the Theranos chief operating officer and her ex-boyfriend. She claims that he abused her for a decade, monitoring her calls, texts, emails, physical violence, restricting her sleep, and insisting that any success she achieved was because of him, adding yet another dimension to the biggest white-collar fraud trial in years.
Just like her idol, Apple's Steve Jobs, Elizabeth Holmes thought she could change the world.
The goal is to empower the individual.
Dropping out of Stanford in 2003 with an idea, the technology to perform a range of medical tests on a single drop of blood from a finger prick. Cheap, painless, maybe saving lives.
It came from losing my family members and people that I loved.
A story made for Silicon Valley, where the story is everything. Theranos would raise some $700 million from investors like Rupert Murdoch and Betsy DeVos, attract luminary board members like former Secretaries of State Henry Kissinger and George Shultz, and strike a deal with Walgreens for in-store blood tests, making Elizabeth Holmes very rich, her company at its peak worth $9 billion. Just one problem, says reporter John Carreyrou, who broke the story.
She commercialized a product, a medical product, that she knew did not work. Her machine only did a handful of tests. It did not do them well at all.
A charge Holmes denied.
This is what happens when you work to change things.
Federal regulators, including the FDA, pounced. In 2018, civil charges from the SEC of a massive fraud. She settled without admitting wrongdoing. Months later, criminal fraud charges against Holmes and Balwani. He goes on trial next year. Both have pleaded not guilty. The feds will have to prove that Holmes intended to commit fraud.
Elizabeth Holmes may try to portray herself as someone who got caught up in the culture of the dot-com industry in Silicon Valley, where you fake it till you make it.
That issue of intent is exactly the point of these new allegations against Balwani. The idea is that he exercised so much control over her that she could not possibly have formed the requisite intent to commit a crime. In that same cache of newly unfiled documents, Balwani denies the allegations. He calls them deeply offensive and devastating personally to him, not to mention prejudicial to his case. Now, this also increases the possibility that Elizabeth Holmes herself takes the stand. The defense team has hinted at that. It is an incredibly risky move if she does so. But Elizabeth Holmes, of course, knows a thing or two about risk and about persuading people here in Silicon Valley. Guys?
Scott, I wonder your take on this. I don't know that I have ever seen an image shift like the one that we are seeing unfold before our eyes, even with Elizabeth Holmes showing up to court this morning. She looks vulnerable. Right? But the image that she put forward, nobody heard about Balwani before when talking about Theranos. It was all about Holmes. She projected ultimate confidence and that she was the decider at Theranos. Have you seen a shift like this before in this kind of context?
Well, I mean, you can see certainly, her demeanor as she shows up for court for proceedings prior to this and today. And it could very well be that, she's in a pretty rough situation that she's not accustomed to based on all the accolades that she had gotten in the past when Theranos was the hottest thing in Silicon Valley. We'll see if that's an act. We'll see if the jury that they're going to be selecting over the next 2 or 3 days buys it or believes it. That's what makes this phase of the case so critical.
So fascinating, Scott. We'll lean on you for all of these fascinating developments. Thank you very much.